In their week before their departure to Arrakis, when all the final scurrying about had reached a nearly unbearable frenzy, an old crone came to visit the mother of the boy Paul. With these words begins one of the most influential and arguably one of the greatest science fiction novels of all time. Hi, my name is Zan, and today we're going to be talking about Frank Herbert's Dune. Hello and welcome to the Spiraken Book Corner Review, the show where we talk about new and old books and tell you the pros and cons about it and if it's worth investing your time in or not. You can check out any of our other episodes or some of the various podcasts connected to this at www.spiraken.com or here on our YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe. I hope that all of you out there who are reading are doing well. Hope you're enjoying and hope you're excited for this really cool show that we're doing. Now, if you've joined us for the first time, and since this is the first episode, obviously, most of you are new. How this works is this review is going to be broken into two parts. This video version is going to be my basic thoughts about it and overarching narrative. If you go to our website at spiraken.com, you can hear an audio version, which is a debate and discussion between me and someone else who has read the book. We go over our own personal thoughts about the book. It's a little more in depth and it's a little more spoiler heavy. Since this is a basic review, I'm going to try to keep spoilers as light as possible. So that's how this is going to work. So let's get to it, shall we? So in order to do this review right, I feel that I'm going to break this into three parts. We're going to start off with a summary, then I'm going to give you the pros and cons, then my overall thoughts. Okay? And with any good book, you gotta go with what the story's about. And Dune is a simple story about Arrakis, the desert planet, the only known source of the spice known as melange in the entire universe. Melange is a sought-after commodity because of its practical applications, and there are a multitude of them. From being used to navigate the stars to giving eternal life. Everyone is after it. And more importantly, as one character says, whomever controls the spice controls the universe. And this is the story of a young man getting from it's the story of a young man's coming of age as he deals with treachery, violence, betrayal, several prophecies, and the choice between doing what is good and what is right. Now, Dune is broken up into three parts. And the first part is known simply as Dune. And that explains how House Atreides gained stewardship of the planet Arrakis. And they're going to be taking control of the production and shipment of melange. However, when House Atreides gets to Arrakis, they discover that this is actually a plot by their rivals, the House Harkonnen, to wipe them out. Through a bitter betrayal, a lot of things happen. And that leads us into the second book, called Muad'Dib. And this tells about the two surviving members of House Atreides, Paul, the heir, and our main character, and his mother, Lady Jessica. And the second book deals with them traveling throughout Dune and meeting up with the local indigenous people, the Fremen, and becoming part of their tribe. Also, all of the things going on with this prophecy that is being set up. Also, the Harkonnens getting their power back and their plots coming together. The third part of this book is known as The Prophet, and this takes place 2 years after the initial first two books. And this deals with Paul, 2 years later, now a full-fledged member of the Fremen, leading a rebellion against the Harkonnen and, potentially, the empire of the universe. What happens? Will a prophecy be fulfilled? Will Paul become the man that needs to be, or will he give it all up to find happiness? And will Harkonnens get their just desserts? That is what this book is about. It is all these things wrapped up together. And I could break it down further into a lot of the characters and the little side plots. And since this came out in 1965, I could spoil the hell out of it. But I don't think I should, because there is a lot of elements that are best left read or interpreted. So now let's get to the pros and cons about this. Now, first off, the pros about this. One, the world of Dune is immaculate. It's a world you want to dive into and absorb. The cultures, the characters, the descriptions of the world, all the little customs that are explained, they're intriguing, engaging, and they were thought out heavily by Frank Herbert. He spent 5 years developing this world, and it shows with all the little minute details. Just going over one part, the actual, not religion, but the culture of the Fremen is so immense and ingenious. They're the native people of Arrakis, and for them, water is not an easy thing. It is life. People's lives are weighed in water. If you kill someone, you're given rings that represent their weight in water, and it goes to the tribe. If you cry, it's considered crying, giving gifts to the dead. If you make a deal with someone, you spit in front of them, not as an insult, but you're giving your life water to someone else. It's really fascinating and cool, and you just want to dig into it. And you want to just this is awesome. And this is just one of many elements which are really fully realized in this world that Frank Herbert made. To go even further, there's all of the different uses of spices and all the factions who are fighting over the spice. Not including House Atreides and their rivals House Harkonnen. You have the Spacing Guild, who their whole reason for wanting to use the spice is because they are the ones who travel the stars, and without the spice, they're not able to plot routes. Because there are no more computers in this far distant future. There are no robots. There's nothing with the mind of a human artificially made. So you need to go through some genetics to make beings that are able to think that fast. And the Spacing Guild monopolizes on that. But they need spice in order to compute these routes so that you don't end up in a star or in a black hole. They're the living equivalent of a nav computer in the Star Wars universe. You need them. And without spice, no one travels. The universe just will become stagnant and no one will spread across the universe. Until someone eventually invents a robot but I digress. And then you have, of course, the Bene Gesserit. They're a cult of women who've been running things behind the scene for years because they're trying to make this prophecy come true of the Kwisatz Haderach, who is a super being who is going to bring order to the universe. And they have been genetically creating someone through genetic breeding and selective breeding, and they've just been planning and plotting and making sure everything works out so their plan comes to fruition. However, due to some reasons, this may be happening sooner than they anticipated. But for them to see the future, the past, truth, they need the spice. And like I said, there are tons of other groups that are after the spice. I didn't even get into the Mentats, who are the kind of the equivalent of the Spacing Guild, except as opposed to them charting the stars, Mentats are living computers. So you have a Mentat next to you. It's a guy who's your servant who is able to logically process millions of thoughts at once to come up with the optimum route for whatever you're trying to do. And there are a whole group of them. Then there's also the Sword Masters and the different houses. I didn't even get into the Potish Emperor, who he is the leader of the universe, who he's kind of letting his strings get pulled and doesn't do much. There's a lot going on in this book, and it's very well developed. But that's the first pro. The second pro for this book is that there are sequences that are truly memorable and are easy to talk about. The first chapter is one of the best chapters I've read in a long time, and that is, of course, the trial of Paul and the Reverend Mother, or the Gom Jabbar sequence. For those of you who may have watched the movie, it is the fear is the mind killer, fear is a little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear, I will permit it to pass over me and through me, and when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. When the fear has gone, there will be nothing, only I will remain sequence. Which is a litany that is followed forever. If you've heard fear is the mind killer, this is where it came from. And it's a point of overcoming your fear, because on animal fears, you should use the fear to get past what you need to do. And it's a very well-done lesson that should be learned. It's a great sequence. It's a little tragic and harrowing. Another sequence that is very iconic is when Paul is able to ride the sandworms of Arrakis. Yes, I didn't even bring up the sandworms. Giant worms that are the size of a football field at least, that control the entire planet. They are a huge threat, but they cause also a lot of good things to happen as well. And the sequence of Paul taming one is an iconic sequence. Also, the first time when Paul sees a sandworm is truly awe-inspiring. If you watch the new trailer for the Dune 2021 movie, the one with Denis Villeneuve directing it, they show that sequence in the trailer, which does kind of suck because it's such a great sequence, but just seeing the sandworm appear, it's just, wow. So those are the positives of Dune. Now let's get to the negatives. And the first one is the one which most people say. This book is long. If you look at the Wikipedia page, it says it's 481 pages. However, this copy I have right here has it at 798 pages, plus 2 appendixes, plus a glossary of terms, plus a geological reference for all of Arrakis. Those are all really fascinating. But the story is long, and it drags out. And you could even say it is longiloquent, which for those of you who don't know, it's pretentious, bloated, and it's slow. There are some great action sequences in this book, but it takes a while to get to them. And after that first chapter, the first chapter is really cool because it goes into basic history, goes into the Paul being tested, and then it gets to the Harkonnens and the Baron explaining his grand plan. In most books, the villain would take a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, to explain their grand plan. Frank Herbert has 30 pages explaining this plan, which could be done in a paragraph. It's boring. It's long-winded, and you're like, get to the fucking point. It's just, it is boring. And a lot of the book is like that. One of the most popular places for people to drop out is this scene, which is a dinner party. And if you read it as it is, it's just a dinner party between the House Atreides and some guests. And it's them talking for 30 pages. If you go into the underlying theme of it, it's all threats and political navigations. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you're going to love it, because it is totally Littlefinger and the small council debates, all those little intricate discussions. And that's cool if you're a fan of that. If you're not, you're going to be like, fuck this, I'm going to drop out. And I do apologize if I'm cursing a lot in this, but that's the only way I could get past it. Because that's how it is. It is long-winded, and it is kind of boring. Most people take 5 times to get through this book. For me, it's been a while. I've been trying, and because of this review, I finally got through it. But here's the cool part. When you get past all that, when you get to the end of the book, part of you, after a while, wants to go back and reread it, and pieces that were long-winded make more sense. So it's getting through that hump, but that's a negative. First thing, it's long-winded. Second thing is, like I said, not a lot of action, not a lot happens for large periods of it, and that could come across a bit boring. The length is a deterrent. 700 pages is a big investment. This isn't a book that you want to speed read because you'll miss things, but on the same token, you might forget about what's going on and have to go back and reread, and then you get tired and you don't want to deal with it. So, yeah. So, pros, brilliant world, really iconic sequences. Cons, it's really long. And more importantly than that, it's bloated with dialogue that is unnecessary. This could be streamlined dramatically, and it would feel a little bit better. And that's kind of a problem, because some people don't want to give the time to get there. Frank Herbert's prose are terrible. He's not a great writer. Like, he's a genius. His concept is genius. His story's brilliant, but as a writer, he's not that great. I've heard that in the second and third book, he gets his stride and it makes sense. But I'm judging it on one book. And for that reason, it's given me a lot of thoughts on where to put this. And for those of you who are joining us, Spiraken uses not numbers, not letters, not stars. We judge books and we review with phrases. And our lowest phrase, our lowest rating, is take it to a priest, purify it, and burn it. It's a garbage book. Our second lowest is going to be typical reading material at local correctional facility or psychiatric institute. It's bad, but there's probably one redeeming feature. It could be a character, it could be a statement, it could be a phrase, it could be a sentence. But there's something redeeming about it. Then there's our middle of the ground, which is simply Gift from Your Crazy Aunt Muriel. It's okay, but it's forgettable. Enough said. Then there's our second highest rating, which is borrow from a friend and don't return unless offered something. In this case, I'd say don't return unless offered spice, because it means it's really good. It's not worth buying, but if you've got it, it's worth reading. There's probably one thing wrong with it. It's not a perfect book, but it's a damn good book. And then finally, there's our highest rating. Really, really, really fucking cool. What are you doing? Go get this book right now. Go to the store, go to Amazon, put it in your cart, buy it now. It's a great book. You have to read it. It's totally worth reading. And I had to go back and forth with this because it's kind of hard to describe where I put this, because going to one of our other podcasts, the Spiraken Anime Review and Spiraken Television Tuesday, something I always say is always give a TV show 3 to 5 episodes, because it may start off weak, but it gets stronger as it goes on. Or it gives you 5 episodes to hook you, and then after that, drop it. However, there's sometimes when the first 5 episodes are garbage. 6 episodes is garbage. But then around episode 10, maybe, or 14, the show gets good. And that's kind of what happens here, because the first chapter is so strong. And then it just nosedives for a while. And then, at a certain point, it skyrockets and it makes sense. That was kind of a problem with it. But afterwards, it has the rereadability and you learn more and you see more. So, for that reason, the first half of the book, I give A Gift from Your Crazy Aunt Muriel. Okay, but forgettable, because it is so pretentious and it is so long-winded. The ideas are there, but it's kind of annoying. However, if you get through that part, you get to the end, it goes to a borrow from a friend. I don't think it's worth buying. A lot of people say it's their favorite book of all time. I don't think it's the greatest book of all time. It has inspired many books. Don't get me wrong. There are concepts in here that you will see in other books and be like, hey, that's from Dune. Or you say, I read that in Wheel of Time. And it's all from this book, so you can't not acknowledge that it is groundbreaking. However, it's not one I want to buy or own. I bought this new edition because it's a cool edition, but honestly, I would rather have rented it from the library. I would have borrowed it and then returned it. It's not a full investment. So for that reason, I have to give this, thinking about it, I'm going to bump it up and give this a very low borrow from a friend. Pretty good, if you can get past it. If you can't get past it, it's A Gift from Your Crazy Aunt Muriel. It's that first part you have to get past, and it is so long-winded. So once you get past that dinner sequence, things are a little better. There are some leaps of logic, though, that I hated. There's one point where you have this really tender scene where two people are talking and being really cool with each other, and then the next chapter, it immediately jumps into a major plot, and there's no transition into it. It's just like, hey, everything's good, and then they splash you in the face with something. It's unexpected, which is cool, but I would have liked a little bit more. I know that's counterintuitive to, I want it shorter, but yeah. Some places I'd make it shorter, some places I'd add things, but that's my take on it. Now, if you've read Dune, let me know. Leave a comment of what your thoughts about Dune were. Also, listen to our podcast where I and former co-host of the Spiraken Manga Review, Mason, discuss our thoughts on Dune. We go over a lot more spoilers on the characters and our thoughts on a lot of elements. I give the review again, and more importantly than that, in that episode you find out how I'm going to be choosing the next book for our show. Be excited for it, and I think that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any comments or concerns, leave a comment. Email me personally at Xan, that's Xan at Spiraken.com. Remember to like and subscribe. Check out the podcast and follow that. You can find me also on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, on the Lexi app, and yeah. So with that in mind, I'm Xan. I'm Gonzville. I'll catch you guys next time, and keep reading. See you later.